It was 7 o'clock in the morning when I found Chloe collapsed against the bathroom wall, clutching her stomach with a face so pale she looked almost translucent, but nothing prepared me for the sickening lurch in my chest when I glanced at her medical intake clipboard an hour later and saw the word she had written under relationship: collateral damage. We had been living together in our sun-drenched downtown apartment for 6 months, a quiet, orderly life where we shared quiet breakfasts under the warm morning sun and traded polite small talk, yet seeing those 2 words scrawled in her sharp, trembling handwriting shattered everything I thought I knew about her. If this story touches your heart and reminds you of the quiet burdens people carry every single day, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel if you believe in kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances. Your support helps build our community into a place where meaningful stories can continue to bring light into people's lives. That morning had started like any other bright, calm Tuesday. The morning light was pouring through the wide bay windows of our kitchen, casting golden rectangles across the hardwood floor while I brewed coffee. Chloe had been unusually quiet for the past few weeks, often retreating to her bedroom early, skipping meals, and offering faint, forced smiles whenever I asked if she was doing all right. I had assumed it was just the stress of her new job at the architecture firm, a demanding entry-level position that kept her hunched over drafting boards from dawn until dusk. But when I heard the sharp, muffled thud from the hallway bathroom, followed by a soft, agonizing groan, I dropped my mug and ran. I found her sitting on the cold tiles, shivering despite the gentle warmth of the morning sun streaming through the small frosted window. Her forehead was slick with cold sweat, her hands pressed tightly against her lower right abdomen, and her eyes were filled with a raw, terrified panic that I had never seen in her before. I did not hesitate. Wrapping my arm around her waist, I helped her stand, guiding her slow, agonizing steps out to my car. The morning air was crisp and clear, the sun sitting bright and high in the blue sky as I sped down the avenue toward the nearest urgent care clinic. The drive was a blur of taut nerves and low, soothing reassurances as Chloe kept her head pressed against the passenger window, taking short, shallow breaths. When we arrived at the clinic, the waiting room was bathed in clean, bright daylight, completely empty save for a young mother reading a magazine near the corner window. I gently helped Chloe into one of the padded chairs before approaching the front desk. The receptionist handed me a thick plastic clipboard attached to a stack of intake forms, asking if I could help fill out the patient details while they prepped an examination room for her. I sat down in the chair right next to Chloe, placing the clipboard on my lap. Chloe's eyes were half closed with pain, her breath coming in ragged hitches, so I took the pen and began navigating the routine lines of text. Name, Chloe Bennett. Date of birth, August 14th, emergency contact, her mother's name and phone number. Everything seemed standard until my eyes drifted down to the section regarding family history, social dynamics, and emergency living situations, a newly updated form designed to assess patient support systems at home. There was a section titled Current Living Arrangements and Relationship to Cohabitants. Beneath it was a line marked Relationship Status/Emotional Support Network. Chloe had already filled out that specific line in the waiting area while waiting for me to pull the car around, her small handwriting distinct and shaky. In bold, dark ink, she had crossed out the pre-printed options of roommate, friend, and family, and in the blank margin beside it, she had written, collateral damage. The word seemed to burn off the page. I sat frozen in the bright, clinical light of the waiting room, staring at the phrase while the low hum of the air conditioner filled the silence between us. A wave of confusion, hurt, and profound guilt washed over me. I had considered Chloe a friend, someone I was slowly building a genuine bond with after taking her in as a roommate 6 months ago. I thought we were building a safe, happy home together. But seeing those words written in a moment of absolute vulnerability made me realize how completely I had failed to see her true reality. Was I the one making her feel like collateral damage? Or was she carrying a crushing weight from her past that made her view herself as nothing more than a burden to everyone around her? Before I could process the surge of emotions crashing over me, a nurse opened the inner door and called Chloe's name. I quickly folded the papers, handed the clipboard back to the receptionist without saying a word about the note, and helped Chloe stand. The nurse guided us down a sunlit corridor into a bright examination room where the morning sun beamed warmly through high blinds. The doctor, a calm and attentive woman named Dr. Vance, stepped in shortly after. After a swift and careful evaluation, Dr. Vance confirmed that Chloe was suffering from severe, acute appendicitis and needed to be transferred immediately to the adjacent surgical center for an emergency procedure. As the medical team prepared the gurney, Chloe reached out, her fingers weakly clutching the sleeve of my jacket. Her eyes were wide with fear, not just of the upcoming surgery, but of being alone. I held her hand tightly, leaning in close so she could hear me clearly over the bustling activity around us. I told her that I was not going anywhere, that I would be right there in the waiting room until she woke up, and that she did not have to face any of this by herself. A single tear slipped down her cheek, leaving a clean track through the pale dust of exhaustion on her face, before the nurses rolled her down the hall toward the operating room. Left alone in the quiet, sunlit waiting area of the surgical center, I paced back and forth across the polished floors, the word collateral damage echoing repeatedly in my mind. Determined to understand what she was carrying, I remembered that Chloe had asked me to grab her phone and personal bag from the car earlier so she could keep her mother updated. Sitting on the sunlit bench near the courtyard windows, I picked up her bag to set it neatly on the table. As I did, a worn, leather-bound notebook slipped out from the side pocket, landing open on the wooden bench. I did not mean to pry, but my eyes caught the top of the page, written in the same shaky handwriting as the intake form. Page after page detailed a heavy, heartbreaking story that Chloe had kept hidden behind her gentle smiles and quiet demeanor. The entries revealed a painful past filled with emotional neglect and abandonment. Chloe had grown up in an unpredictable, highly volatile household where her presence was treated as an inconvenience, a lingering remainder of a broken marriage. Her previous roommates had taken advantage of her gentle nature, leaving her with unpaid debts, ruined credit, and sudden eviction notices, treating her as an afterthought whenever life became chaotic. She had spent years internalizing the belief that she was merely a secondary figure in other people's lives, an unwanted piece of collateral damage caught in the crossfire of everyone else's needs and problems. When she moved in with me, she had convinced herself that it was only a matter of time before I, too, realized she was a burden and pushed her away, which was why she kept her pain concealed and worked herself into total exhaustion to avoid making a single mistake. Reading her words under the bright, uncompromising afternoon sun made my heart ache with a deep, profound sorrow. I realized that my own busy schedule and polite distance had unintentionally reinforced her fear. By staying polite rather than pushing to truly know her, I had allowed her to feel completely isolated in our shared home. She wasn't just struggling with physical pain, she was living in a constant state of emotional self-defense, waiting for the moment the floor would drop out from beneath her feet again. 2 hours later, the surgical doors opened, and Dr. Vance stepped out into the hallway with a reassuring smile. She informed me that the surgery had been a complete success, that they caught the inflammation just in time, and that Chloe was resting comfortably in a private recovery room. Relief washed over me like a warm wave. I thanked the doctor and followed the nurse down the bright, quiet corridor to Chloe's room. The afternoon sun was streaming through the expansive window, filling the room with a warm, golden glow. Chloe was propped up against a stack of crisp white pillows, looking frail but vastly more peaceful than she had hours earlier. The color was slowly returning to her cheeks, and the agonizing tension that had gripped her posture all morning had finally dissolved. As I walked into the room, she looked up at me, her expression a mix of exhaustion and quiet embarrassment. I brought a chair over to the side of her bed, sat down, and gently placed a cool glass of water on her bedside table. For a few minutes, we sat in a gentle, comfortable silence while the sunlight moved slowly across the room. Then, taking a deep breath, I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the intake form copy the clinic had given me for her records. I gently laid it on the edge of the blanket, pointing softly to the line she had filled out earlier that morning. I did not approach her with anger or judgment, only with complete transparency and warmth. I told her that I had seen what she wrote, and that while I understood why her past had made her feel that way, I wanted to make one thing absolute clear: in our home, and in my life, she was not collateral damage. She was a valued friend, a person worthy of care, respect, and unconditional support, and she never had to hide her pain or pretend to be fine just to earn a place to belong. Chloe stared at the paper, her lower lip trembling as the full weight of my words sank in. Tears welled up in her eyes, but this time they were not tears of fear or physical agony. They were tears of immense relief, the kind that come when a heavy burden carried for far too long is finally laid down. She confessed how terrified she had been to rely on anyone, how she had trained herself to believe that showing weakness would make people leave, and how overwhelmed she was by the fact that I had stayed with her through the entire ordeal. I reached out and held her hand, reassuring her that true friendship means showing up when things are hard, not just when things are easy and quiet. I made a promise to her right then, bathed in the soft afternoon light of that hospital room, that our apartment would always be a sanctuary where she was seen, heard, and valued for exactly who she was. We spent the rest of the afternoon talking openly, sharing stories about our lives, our fears, and our hopes for the future, breaking down every wall of distance that had existed between us over the past 6 months. By late afternoon, the doctor gave Chloe approval to be discharged into my care with instructions for a few days of rest and recovery. Walking out of the clinic together into the warm, bright air of early evening, the world felt completely transformed. The heavy cloud of unspoken hurt that had lingered between us was entirely gone, replaced by a deep, unwavering bond of trust and mutual understanding. Returning to our apartment, I helped her settle comfortably onto the living room sofa, surrounding her with pillows, blankets, and a warm meal. For the first time since she had moved in, Chloe looked completely at home, her face relaxed into a genuine, radiant smile that reached her eyes. What began as a terrifying medical emergency on a quiet Tuesday morning became the very moment our lives shifted forever. It taught both of us that healing does not just happen in hospital rooms with medicine and band-aids. True healing happens when we choose to look past the masks people wear, offer unconditional kindness, and rewrite the painful labels that life has forced them to carry. Chloe was no longer a stranger hiding behind polite smiles, and she was certainly never collateral damage again. She was family, bound not by blood, but by a shared choice to extend grace, offer forgiveness, and create a space where hope could thrive. As you reflect on Chloe's story and the powerful transformation that took place in her life, ask yourself, have you ever felt like a burden to others, or have you ever helped someone realize just how truly valuable they are? Please leave a meaningful comment below sharing your thoughts, experiences, or the lesson this story brought to your heart today. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey.